Hello, my friends. Sticking with today's theme, which is authenticity, I'm just going to begin speaking. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for taking a moment to find a friend in my voice. And that's what I hope my voice can be to you, is just a reminder that you are not alone. I hope that you hear yourself in me, because I have seen myself in you. I have accepted you, and I have loved you, and I have forgiven myself in forgiving you. We are the one, right? There is no individual, really. It seems like it feels like it, but as we acknowledge that we are one, then we become our true selves. We become a more loving expression of love. And so I welcome you today. I welcome you into my heart. I acknowledge that we are of one mind. And I give you thanks for spending this time with me. What was on my mind this morning before I pressed record was the heart of David. And that may mean something to you if you clicked on this channel. I had an experience, a Christian awakening experience, or maybe I should say an awakening of spirit in the context of Christianity. It was well over 20 years ago now that this experience happened for me, this awakening experience that happened within the context of an evangelical, prophetic, hand-raising, tongue-talking, prophesying, Bible Belt, fundamentalist Christianity. Are there enough descriptors there? There were no snake handling. I don't know. That may mean something to you. That may not. Probably it does if you've tuned in. Anyway, one of the prophecies that was spoken over to me that came out, that I still kind of hold, that I remember from that time, is someone spoke over me that I had the heart of David. And I am no Bible scholar, my friend. I have friends who are Bible scholars. I didn't go back to my Bible before I pressed record here. So I'm just going to speak in just from my general understanding. From what I understand, David had a heart after God, a genuine, authentic heart after the one true living God. His heart was after truth. He had a heart full of love, apparently, or a heart that sought love. Yet David was also a messy guy who stumbled around in the dark at times, and who followed his passion and desire and wanted this and chose this path to make things go his way, to get what he wanted. He was a musician, an artist who could sing and play and calm even his enemies. This was brought to my attention the other day in a conversation with my friend Dan. We're talking about, I was reminded of the heart of David. And the way it came was like this. We were talking about, me and Dan have had this long standing dialogue for the past 5 years or more. And our main concern has been recovery or discovery or awakening or enlightenment or authenticity, uh, discovering God, God manifesting in ourselves, how to be of help in this world, or just like simple question like, how can I live with myself? How can I live with myself? That's been kind of our big question. Because I think it's kind of a universal question. How can I live with myself? So along those lines, we have this part of our conversation is about what it's like to have a spiritual practice, right? What it's like to sometimes in our spiritual practices we abstain from certain things. We acknowledge that there are certain things that we put in our bodies, or certain ways that we treat ourselves, or certain ways that we treat other people that seem to be not healthy, right? We may drink too much, we may drug too much, we may eat too much, we may want too much sex, or we may have relationships that, like the way that we treat people, isn't helpful for us or someone else. And so one way that we deal with that is by making up rules for ourselves. And we say, oh, so when I do that, things go bad, so I'm not going to do that anymore. It's abstinence in any form, right? Abstinence from drink, abstinence from drugs, abstinence from relationships, abstinence from the wrong kinds of food, abstinence from pornography. We see these certain acts or behaviors that we do, and then we cut them out of our lives. And that's a pretty common practice, and it's a common spiritual practice. It's like renunciation, right? We renounce the world in our spiritual practice, right? We renounce this, we renounce that. So this has been one of the topics of Dan and I's conversation over the past years. So I was thinking about that in the context of the heart of David. And it occurred to me that David was not afraid to live life. David was not afraid to be moved, to reach out, to stretch out, to want something. And as kind of the results of that reaching out, that stretching out happened, he was also absolutely unafraid to understand himself in relationship to God, in relationship to his true self. And you can watch the character of David struggling in his Psalms. You can see him in one moment adoring God, and then you can see him hating his enemies, wishing them dead, asking God to strike them down. And you can see this struggle in this man, in this character in the Old Testament, this psalmist, this man who wrote songs, this man who had great love and who also could hate deeply and hurt others. He was messy as fuck. Right? He was messy. And he also just acknowledged his oneness with his Creator. He just kept coming back, no matter what he did. So along those lines, I was thinking about how so often we make up these rules for ourselves to keep ourselves safe. Because we're like, oh, I did that and I'll never do that again. And like I said, I think that can be a part of our practice, is abstaining. I still practice abstinence. But my point is this, is that sometimes I think the rules that we make to keep ourselves safe I think that they actually keep us from learning what it is that we need to learn. Just a personal instance here is, um, some I came up with this acronym for myself, and it was DRAGON. D, differentiated. R, resilient. A, affectionately aware. G, generous. O, open-hearted, open-minded, open-ended. N, namaste. The divine in me acknowledges the divine in you. And the D was especially important when I invented that acronym, or when that acronym came to me with the dragon. A dragon tooth was given to me, as that acronym was being born in my life. The presence of the dragon, which you can search the archetypes and visit Carl Jung and or Joseph Campbell about the dragon or whatever. It was a big study for me. Is the dragon scary? Is the dragon evil? Or is the dragon good? The Chinese have kind of this happy dragon, but then the dragon is also that which guards the greatest treasure. And so, who is this dragon? Is this dragon the ego? Is this dragon? Can the dragon be a symbol of God? And what about the serpent? All of this. But anyway, differentiated was a particularly important word for me at that moment, because I felt that I had given myself away in unhealthy ways. And I was trying to learn, I was trying to understand myself as someone who was lovable and also capable of loving. And so I was differentiating myself from the other, because I knew that I somehow in my marriage of over 20 years, I had compromised myself so deeply, my true self. I had given so much of myself away that I no longer was in touch with my deeper self, with my true self. I was no longer in touch with God. My ego, EGO, I had edged God out. Right? Thanks, Dan, for that. So I was exploring what it was like to keep myself from the other, to know my true self before I gave myself to the other. Right? Differentiated. So I came up with that acronym, and I tried to live by that acronym. I wanted that acronym to keep me safe. I wanted the dragon to keep me safe, to protect me, And recently, that dragon tooth necklace, just a matter of weeks ago, as I was kind of moving into this deeper awakening, it fell apart. It had been made for me by a dear friend, a young man at a treatment center at a mental health treatment facility that I had visited. He called me Jam Master Trav or something because we play guitar together. His name was Zach. He was just this mountain climber, just this guy who just probably a heart of David in himself. This young man who just embraced life to its fullest, A heroin addict. But that's not who he was, right? That's not his identity. His identity is much deeper than that, but that was his experience, And he had made this necklace for me. And then in the course of events, I'd realized, it was an arrowhead, encased in these wires that he had wrapped so meticulously. And he'd given me this necklace. And at some point I acknowledged, I was like, oh, that's a dragon tooth, So that became my story. I love that story, So I invent these acronyms. I invent these ways of keeping myself safe, these ways of protecting myself and guiding me along my spiritual path. And sometimes that involves abstinence. differentiate. I'm not going to fall into another human being like I have in the past. I'm not going to give myself away inappropriately. I'm not going to ask someone else to be something to me that they can never be, right? But then that necklace, it fell apart just a few weeks ago. And I felt like that was part of the story too, is letting those acronyms fall apart, letting those ways that we keep ourselves, those ways that we try to protect ourselves, allowing those things to fall apart. I didn't try to fix the necklace because it was more significant for me for the necklace to fall apart. And if you've been tuning in, you'll understand that as leaving form behind, right? That all the forms that we create, all the rules that we create for ourselves to keep ourselves okay externally need to fall apart at some point, and they will naturally fall apart. All the practices, the religions that we choose to adhere to, they will fall apart in one way or another. I'm not saying that you have to leave your religion or that you have to leave your yoga, that you have to, but I'm saying as we develop, as we deepen, it does fall apart, right? And we'll say things like, oh, I used to see it this way, but now I see it this way. It's not the same practice that it was at the beginning. So we move through these forms. I don't hate the dragon. I don't despise these days when I had the dragon or when acronym, or when I wore the dragon necklace, but I allow it to fall apart. When the necklace falls apart, I allow it to fall apart. And I think that's kind of what David understood too. I think David understood that he needed to live life all in, full on, right? I think he understood that. And I think he allowed himself to experience himself as human. And then he also allowed himself to come back over and over again to his true self. He allowed himself to come back to God. He came back to the kingdom of heaven, which he understood to be within. Yes? He gave himself away. He gave himself away in all the extremes, right? Maybe he might have been, he may have been labeled bipolar. Maybe given psychotropic medications to fix his state of Davidness. Yes? I met with another friend recently. His name is Tim, and I've known him for many, many years. And he is a man of God, of the Christian faith. He's on the fringe, though. I love him dearly, and my relationship with him has developed over the years. And he said to me something that was very important. I don't even know how I'm going to tell you right now, but it was just basically a message of acceptance and understanding. He was acknowledging to me my struggle. Someone on the fringe, as he kind of is, and his practice, was acknowledging me on the fringe. I thank God for people like Dan and Tim in my life, because they give me context. They show me the Christ. They have given me refuge, as I have also given them. Given me context. They've told me that it's okay to let go. It's okay to be you. It's okay to be true to yourself. With Tim, he's a mystic. That's how That's one word I could use to kind of give context for who he is. He speaks with God and listens to God and has experiences with God every day of his life. And his family gave my family refuge so many, many years ago when we were leaving the shelter of traditional Bible Belt Christianity, when we were moving through that form. They gave us refuge and love and acceptance. He acknowledged that heart of David in me, and I think he still does today, that messiness, that willingness to experience life in its fullest, that willingness to allow ourselves to be human while understanding ourselves as divine. I don't think I have to be a Bible scholar to understand that, to get the heart of that message for myself today. I remember when that was prophesied over me, the heart of David. I remember it meant a great deal to me. But I had to move through a lot of different forms. I had to live that out. I had to learn to accept myself and understand myself. I want to say as fully human and fully divine. I don't know if that matches up with where you may be today, but can we allow ourselves to have this full experience? Can we trust ourselves? Can we trust our deeper self? Can we trust God? Can we give ourselves that gift? Can we allow that gift to be given to us? Can we get over ourselves? Can we release ourselves to the care of a God of our own understanding? I'm reminded now of step 1 in the 12 steps. It's basically just, I came to see that my life is unmanageable. Sorry, I'm not able to quote it exactly right now. It's just not coming to me. But my life has become unmanageable, right? And I'm powerless over blank. I'm powerless over alcohol. I am powerless over overeating. I am powerless over my sex addiction. I'm powerless over pornography. I'm powerless over this. I'm powerless over that, right? I come to this place where I acknowledge that the way that I'm living right now isn't quite working. And I'm saying to myself, how can I live with myself, basically? How can I possibly live with myself? This isn't working. I am unhappy, basically. I'm suffering. That's what step 1 is. It's an acknowledgement of suffering. It's an acknowledgement that this form that I'm in, the way that I'm living right now is not working for me. I sense death upon me. And this is a universal step. And it's a step that David knew well. Step 1. Just acknowledging that this particular form that I'm in right now isn't working. That I'm dying a death. Step 2, came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. Came to believe, right? I acknowledge a power greater than myself, and I understand that that power wants to restore me to sanity. Step 3. Made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood God, a God of my own understanding. Yeah, so you don't have to live the 12 steps to see, that there's a universal progression in all of that, right? I think David was working the 12 steps in that respect, right? All form is to be moved through. The dragon necklace always falls apart. We have to release ourselves from the forms that we acknowledge. And we move through form with forgiveness, right? And that's what David allowed himself to do, is he moved through his forms of expression. He moved through his desire. He allowed himself his desire. He allowed himself to be who he was. And then he came to believe that a power greater than himself could restore him to sanity, right? So we all have these forms. We all have these ways. We join, we submit, we comply, and then maybe at some point we realize that to be true to ourselves, we have to move past that form. We have to allow ourselves to move on, right? We have to allow ourselves to be human. We have to allow ourselves to keep moving forward, to be all in, to be full on, to take a risk, to let go of those rules that seemed to be keeping us safe, right? That form that seemed to be keeping us safe. At some point, the D in dragon, the differentiation, I had to let go of that rule, right? I have to let somebody in. I have to say yes to love again, and the dangers of letting someone else in close. I have to trust God. I hope this has been somehow helpful for you. I feel it's been helpful for me. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for being with me. Let me know who you are if you want to. Let me know what's going on with you. I'm just making myself available here. Just kind of sharing my experience, sharing my strength, sharing my hope. God bless you, my friend. You are light. You are love. You are the way. You are the truth. You are the life. You are the Christ. You are the one who forgives. May that Christ be made manifest in you today. May we forgive. May our practice be one of forgiveness. Forgiveness of the other that seems to be outside of us. As we forgive those that seem to be not us, we're actually forgiving ourselves because we are one. 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 no matter what the teacher told you, no matter what the other children said. We are one.